Hey everybody, this is Dan.
And this is Ron.
This is the nominee questionable movies.
Yay! Welcome
And
back.
welcome back. And today we watched a movie. I don't know how questionable it was necessarily, but I guess we'll see over the next however many hours this recording session goes.
They're all questionable, and none of them are questionable. It's Schrodinger's movie.
We ask the big questions that may or may not have needed to be asked, but we're already here, you're already here, so just like make yourself some coffee or something, strap yourself in, and let's talk about Charlie Chaplin's The Gold Rush.
Wait, is that what we watched?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So that's what that was.
For those of you who are unaware, Charles Chaplin was a famous comedian known for his clothing never fitting and his distinctive mustache,
What was
but
the
has otherwise been forgotten by history.
Is the clothing never fitting something that was always the case, or when he played the tramp?
It's part of the tramp character, yeah. Because like when he's the millionaire at the spoiler alert, there's a happy ending. He does actually find gold eventually.
No,
yeah, he's the millionaire. Yeah, he's like perfect. You see pictures of Chaplin out, and like it's kind of weird seeing him without, because it's not a real mustache. It's just they put grease paint on. That was like a classic. Like Groucho Marx never had an actual mustache until he did You Bet Your Life, like later in his life. All the Marx Brothers movies, that's just grease paint on his face. Grease paint was kind of like your all-in-one solution back in the 1920s. It could get you anywhere from like the minstrel show to having facial hair.
Yeah, thankfully Groucho Marx and Charlie Chaplin were not into minstrel shows, at least as far as I know. I don't know, were there any they didn't do
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's like a decent amount of blackface in Buster Keaton movies.
Oh yeah,
in the background, mostly, but it's not like a major component of the movie ever.
Okay. Like they didn't put it on. It's not like Fred Astaire in is it Top? No, not Top Gun.
Yeah, it's Swing Time.
In Swing
Time when he does that like big tribute to Bojangles of Harlem.
Right. And we talked about that a little bit almost a year ago, but and
that's by far not the most problematic Fred Astaire movie. Like not by a long shot.
You talked about that too, about the where he slaps. Doesn't he slap around?
He's a Freudian. He's her therapist. They get together romantically at the end because he slaps her in the face to get her over a fit of hysteria. It's like, it's the movie The Fred Astaire Estate. Well, I want to say they don't want you to see it, but like it had a very nice presentation in that box set that Warner Brothers put out. So,
well, this got dark really fast. Let's go back to the Gold Rush.
The Gold. I mean, The Gold Rush, it was a pretty dark movie, honestly. I didn't remember it being, because the last time I saw the movie in its entirety, I think I was in high school.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because like that's when I binged a lot of, like, I saw a lot of silent stuff in college, but it was mostly like not stuff that was produced in the United States. Like I think I've seen every Carl Dreyer silent movie, or at least everyone that's still, or no, I never saw Michael, but I've seen all the other ones.
Have you seen all of Charlie Chaplin movies? All Charlie Chaplin movies?
No, I never saw The Kid. I never saw The Circus. I never saw Countess from Hong Kong. Never saw A King in New York.
Okay. Never saw The Kid?
I never saw The Kid. No, I think I've seen the rest of it. I've definitely seen, if I haven't seen most of the shorts, then I've at least seen like enough shorts where I'm pretty sure I saw all the shorts.
Okay.
I've seen every Buster Keaton film except for Go West. I think I've seen at least like 75% of the Harry Langdon, the Harold Lloyd movies.
Okay.
The Harold Lloyd movies, it's easy because they just put them all into one giant box set, and they never really released most of them individually. So if you own one Harold Lloyd movie besides the Preston Sturges talkie one, you own all of them. I never owned any of them, but the public library where I grew up had an amazing DVD selections. So,
and the thing, of course, that these all have in common is that they're silent, except for the one talkie you mentioned. So.
Except for the one talkie. I mean, Charlie Chaplin made some talkies. Buster Keaton made some talkies. I think Chaplin was the only one who actually directed his talkies.
Okay.
And I mean, like, Buster Keaton, for all intents and purposes, Buster Keaton directed all of his silent films, but usually the director credit went to somebody else at the end of the movie.
But these Charlie Chaplin, at least this one, was directed by him, right? Or was
as far as I know, Chaplin directed every movie that he. I mean, I'm sure he probably appeared in some other things briefly, but if it's a movie starring Charlie Chaplin, it is probably also a movie written by, directed, and scored by Charlie Chaplin.
Okay.
And that's definitely the case here.
All right. And he was also I know we're veering off of the movie. He was one of the founders of United Artists?
Correct. He was the first quote unquote independent film studio.
Yeah. Pre-Cassavetes, pre that other guy.
Right. Pre Lionel Rogozin on the Bowery, pre The Little Fugitive by like quite a ways. And I'm pretty sure the other co-founder of United Artists, I need to double check this. I'm pretty sure it was D.W. Griffith.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
But don't quote me on that.
Right.
And Griffith, of course, his career, Chaplin's the only one that had a substantial career after Silence ended. Because he actually had a decent voice. Like Buster Keaton, as soon as Silence ended, he sounds like a guy who's been living in a bar smoking like 3 packs of cigarettes a day for like 40 years. That's just his natural voice.
Yeah.
Which that didn't really match the character he was playing on screen.
He was stone-faced, but the stone face didn't go with a gravelly throat.
Yeah, there's like dog food commercials he did in the 40s or the late, maybe the 50s. Yeah, because he did a lot of weird side gigs after the silent era. Like for a few years in the talkies, they were trying to make it happen, and they would always pair him with Jimmy Durante, the guy with the giant nose.
Ha-cha-cha-cha. No.
Yeah. The guy in The Great Rupert, which that should be for Christmas. That should be the Christmas movie we watch. It's like such a ridiculous movie, and it's got like early Ray Harryhausen, like
what's the name of the movie?
The Great Rupert. It's not a good movie, but it's Jimmy Durante. It's during the Depression. Jimmy Durante lives in a house, and there's this magical, weirdly unnatural looking squirrel that lives in the ceiling of their house and has been hoarding piles of money for years. And the end of the movie,
wait, don't spoil it yet.
I can't spoil it, but it's really ridiculous.
Okay.
And the squirrel animation is well worth watching. At least like I'm a huge fan of like primitive animation. Like I love those like Vladislav Sterwick things that he did with like taxidermy, not taxidermy. I forget what the correct word is, but like bugs. Basically, you just take dead bugs and create stop motion movies out of them. And they're like not for kids either. They're from like the 1910s, I'm pretty sure. The most famous one is about like bug infidelity. It's like this really intense short about like bugs, like dead bugs cheating on each other.
Oh, that's just cute.
It's so weird.
It's adorable. All right.
Yes. So this is the first time that Ron has seen the Gold Rush, if I am understanding him correctly.
Yep, I've seen one scene of it from it. One famous scene, which we'll get to. But yeah, it's the first time I've seen it. The only thing I knew about it really was that it involved the Gold Rush and involved Charlie Chaplin as his, I'm going to say it, iconic role as, is it the Tramp or the Little Tramp? It's the Tramp. Okay.
I think.
So do you want to describe briefly what the thin plot that it has?
The thin plot, yeah. I mean, this is peak silent movie plotting. I mean, some of the like dramatic silent movies, they'll have fairly linear plots, but silent comedies are they almost kind of like they anticipate like YouTube culture. Like a lot of it seems almost made where it could be chopped up into three separate two reel shorts
Hmm.
if it needed to be, and that's the case with a lot of the first Buster Keaton movie, not the first one he starred in, but the first one he actually like made. The first feature, not the shorts, Three Ages, is literally just three two-reelers, as they called them. Two-reelers because a reel of film at that point could hold 10 minutes of film, and the industry standard for comedy shorts was they would be two reels. So that's why every Buster Keaton short is within 30 seconds of being 20 minutes long. Same thing with the Chaplin shorts. Same thing with the Fatty Arbuckle shorts, and so on and so on and so on.
Sitcoms didn't get much longer. You had your half-hour sitcom was actually 23 minutes, right?
Yeah. The half-hour sitcom is, I think, a lot more linearly constructed usually than a two-reeler, because like two-reelers are sort of, you have a premise and then shit goes crazy usually.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we find Charlie Chaplin. He's got a roommate. He's living in this shack in Alaska during the gold rush of the 1890s. It's very cold. They have not found any gold. He is eating some very questionable objects, including one very famous questionable object that we'll get to. Yeah, he eats a shoe. I don't know if it's a real shoe. I know when Werner Herzog did it, it was a real shoe. In theory, you could eat a real shoe so long as the leather wasn't treated with toxic chemicals, because it's pretty much just like really tasteless beef jerky. Yeah, he eats a shoe. His roommate is so hungry that he's imagining Charlie Chaplin as a giant chicken and trying to shoot him to eat him. And there's apparently this giant dance hall nearby in the encampment. The geography of the film is a little bit confusing, but it works. You know,
Well, they split. They go their separate ways. A bear comes over. They shoot the bear. So now they've got food, and then they go their separate ways. The other guy is a prospector, and he's going off to go and find the land where because he actually found some gold. So he's going to go back and find it. And meanwhile, Charlie Chaplin goes elsewhere, and he goes back to the town.
Yeah, and so he goes to this dance hall. There's a big sign that says "Dance Hall Girls." Having just finished rewatching Deadwood, I immediately just presumed that meant prostitutes.
Yeah. Dance girls, the Monte Carlo dancing girls. Girls.
I don't think that was actually what was going on here. I think it was probably more like vaudeville dancing girls.
Okay.
Which would make sense because that's the kind of women that Chaplin grew up around, because he was performing from a very young age. So it would kind of make sense. Like, I think there's a lot of things that reference back to his childhood in this movie, and we can get to that later. But
okay.
Yeah, and so he goes there. He sees this. Basically the 1925 version of like the most archetypically beautiful woman you could imagine. She has a few friends. She has a boyfriend. He finds a torn picture of her on the floor and becomes smitten. And she and her friends and her boyfriend start playing pranks on him, which he does not understand. There's a very sad sequence where they Georgia, the woman that Chaplin's interested in is named Georgia, and she's like, oh yes, would you like to have dinner on New Year's with me and my three other beautiful girlfriends? And he's like, oh yes, because he doesn't portray himself with a lot of physical vanity in this movie. Let's just put it like that. So, or really, I mean, any of the other movie, he was just not a man who was particularly worried about looking strapping or whatever, which I think is a big difference between him and like Harold Lloyd always looks like he's basically dressed like he's dressed like a normal guy, give or take a pork pie hat. But Chaplin obviously is always kind of dressed like he just like his clothes were thrown in the washing machine while he was still in them.
He's dressed like a tramp.
Yeah. And yeah, so he sits around, he makes this like huge dinner, he shovels a bunch of driveways to get money to buy food and napkins and all this fun stuff.
Like
And
noodles.
yeah, and he's waiting for them to show up. There's a lot of this movie is told in dream sequences, which is kind of interesting. But they're not really true. Like it's not the person. Well, I guess in the New Year sequence he did fall asleep. The chicken thing is more of a hallucination.
Right.
But yeah, so he's waiting around for these women to show up. They have no intentions of showing up. They're off partying at the dance hall. And when he does finally open the door, it's like an angry donkey that wants to chew up his napkins.
Yeah. Well, you left out that so he dreams that they show up.
Oh yeah. He dreams that he has this dream of this like beautiful dinner party they're all having, and they eventually, when Georgia, her friends, and the boyfriend, I forget the boyfriend's name, when they finish partying at the dance hall, they're like, "Oh, let's go have some fun with the tramp," and they show up. He's not there, and I think Georgia like has a sudden change of heart.
She sees all the food and the
yeah, she sees it like he went all out on this.
The melted candles.
And she writes him a letter basically saying, "I'm sorry what I did last night. I love you," because
that was
people say "I love you" very quickly in silent movies because you don't have a lot of time to cram everything in. I mean, I guess that's like movies in general, right? There's not a lot of there aren't a lot of like movie courtships that portray a realistic timeline. Yeah, so I guess she's just decides she's in love with this guy, and then he what's it say? His like buddy comes back and it's like, "Yo, I got the gold claim. We're both gonna be rich." They go out to the cabin, and the cabin does not have a concrete foundation or anything like that. So there's a big storm. There's some great like stop motion animation of this cabin
teetering,
just kind of like going around like a race car over the Arctic tundra, or the Alaskan tundra, I guess, and
spinning around. Think Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Spinning
and
around.
It ends up, of course, perched over the edge of a cliff. There's a great sequence of both of them trying to like not push the cabin over the edge of this cliff.
They go to one side, it starts to, I'm going to use the word teeter. I don't know. It starts to start falling over. So they go back to the other side.
Right, it's like a classic silent comedy, like this appliance, house, or object isn't working. Like a lot of silent comedy is about people's anxieties with the progression of technology in the 20s. Particularly Keaton. Like a lot of the Keaton shorts are basically just, here's a modern contraption, it goes wrong and shit breaks. And then it turns out once they finally do get themselves out of this doomed cabin, that the cabin ended up exactly where the gold claim was.
Oh, right. So now they're millionaires. Woo!
They're millionaires. And then we get to see Charlie all dressed up, cleaned up nice. And he just happens to be on the same boat as Georgia. And a newspaper wants to take a picture of him in his tramp clothes. That's very important because that's like that's a theme that comes up like a lot in Chaplin. And I think part of that has to do with like the success he had early in life, but basically the woman coming to love the tramp character through, he has to be in the tramp clothes, otherwise it's ambiguous that she just wants him because he just came into a bunch of money, basically. And that's kind of like in City Lights, like the girl that he's after is literally blind. Trying to think of the other example. There's a few other ones. And the newspaper takes a picture of the two of them. He's in his tramp outfit, and she's kind of like, I think Ron said she looked very drugged. I
Yeah.
mean, I thought she looked very just shocked that, I mean, for all I know, she could have been loaded. Like, it was the 20s. Like, everybody was drinking like there was no tomorrow. But,
She looks at him like she's a little shocked and somewhat smitten. And as the photographer is trying to take their picture, they slowly turn to each other and they kiss. And the
and
guy,
then Chaplin does like this amazing, because the photographer is sort of like, you're ruining the shot. And then Chaplin like kisses her and is just like, "Feh, you think you know what this photo needs to be," which is kind of a like very subtle lampshade hanging moment, because Chaplin is ultimately the guy who's actually controlling the camera.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is like, I think it was interesting to go back to this because it underscores how much in the 20s film genres hadn't developed fully.
Wait. Can I just say one
Oh
thing?
yeah, yeah,
Go on to the full analysis,
yeah.
and it ends. It's a very sweet, happy ending.
Hmm.
Just so it's not just fair. It's also like, oh, it's a sweet ending. So
Oh
okay,
yeah, yeah, and I mean, and that's like,
I just wanted
that's
to get that
every,
across.
like, I think except for The Great Dictator, I can't think of, like, there's usually a happy ending to those movies,
Yeah.
relative, and like the anxiety and dark stuff is always in the middle.
Right. As was the case here. Yeah,
Hmm.
very much so. So, okay. Now you were saying.
Oh, okay, so yeah, so the movie is very interesting insofar as like there's no such thing in 1925 as an action movie as we know it.
Okay.
There's like adventure serials, but like a lot of what we're, because there's like long portions of the movie where he's not really concerned with being funny. I mean, it all works because he like constructs the narrative very carefully, or maybe not the narrative, but like he knows what he's doing with the camera. He knows how to string together shots to create the sense of like time going forward in a coherent sense. And but yeah, there's like, and even like the thing where they're in the, where the cabin's tipped over and they're trying to get out. It's very compelling, but it's not like super funny. It's just like, whoa, there's like, it's like a thing from an action movie, right? Like the guy's on the edge of the cliff and somebody has to pull him off.
Oh, I thought it was hilarious. Because he'd go to one side. First, they were switching sides. Chaplin, Big Jim, that was the other guy's name, right?
Yeah, yeah, Big
Buddy's
Jim.
prospect. Yeah, so it's like Chaplin's on one side. Big Jim is sleeping. So Chaplin's on the side that's on the ground. Then he starts walking to the right side, or he moves the table, and so it's still even. And then he moves the chairs around so it's still balanced now. Then he starts moving to the right, and it starts tipping. And he thinks he's drunk, or that he's waking up and has a hangover. So then he goes back.
Oh, right, yeah, because he drinks that entire flask of alcohol
Yeah.
before, yeah.
And then Big Jim wakes up, and Chaplin goes to the right side, Big Jim goes to the left, so everything's fine. Then they switch sides, everything's fine. And then one of them starts going to the right, so they're both on the same side, and the house starts tipping over again. But then so they go back to the other side, and then eventually they realize what's going on, that it's not his hangover, because they don't both have the same hangover. So
Right.
you didn't think that part was funny? You thought it was more of an action sequence?
I thought it was pretty funny. I mean, the parts that I found the funniest, like the chicken suit, I always love, like, I love costumes like that where there's no attempt to make it look realistic.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite thing. Like, like you can show me like the worst movie ever, and if it's got a, like, Thanksgiving, perfect example, amazing, grotesque, like murdering turkey puppet work. Everything else about that movie is terrible, but you got this amazing, like, creepy turkey thing that doesn't really look much like a real turkey.
Mhm.
That was hilarious to me. I don't know. I guess maybe for me, like, I feel like I'm just so mesmerized watching him move that I forget to laugh sometimes. Like he's like a dancer, right? He's just like, he has complete control over his body.
Okay.
And I mean, kind of like Jerry Lewis. Like Jerry Lewis, you watch, and like I don't think Jerry Lewis necessarily created as graceful a bed to put his movement into.
What do you,
I mean, he definitely didn't, but yeah, just like watch it. Like, oh god, there's that scene where Chaplin's getting pulled by the pants, and it's hilarious. Like because he knows exactly how to make this like artificial looking, like I'm getting dragged by the pants movement.
uh-huh.
Like like his legs kind of go up like it was a folding chair collapsing or something, right? And yeah, I mean, there's like a lot of there's parts that are sad. There are parts that are very funny. It somehow manages to not really be very realistic, but also doesn't really short sell how rough being in the gold rush probably was.
Hmm.
Um, you know,
Houses teetering on on cliffs, ready to fall down. Yeah.
Right, people starving to death and eating. Like, I mean, the movie
Yeah.
pretty much opens with the two guys starving to death.
Right, right. They're
Um,
forced to eat a shoe.
right, and yeah, and I think that also shows like it's just a very differently constructed comedy than anything that came after Talkies.
Hmm.
I'm still calling them.
I know. Well, these are silence. So the movies that are after silence come the talkies.
A
That's
nominee questionable Talkies. Um, Yeah, that's like when I do like a press tour for Plain Songs, I'm gonna be like, no, fuck you. It's not a movie, it's a talkie. You don't understand my art at all. Do the diva bullshit, right? But like
the diva bullshit.
yeah, I got a hidden cache of primo diva bullshit that I'm just waiting for the right time to unleash upon America.
You've got all sorts of divaness waiting in you.
There's like a little diva inside me waiting to come out. And yeah, and it gets bleak. The portrayal of male female relationships in this is like incredibly, I mean, I guess like male female relationships are always where like the weirdest shit in silent comedies is usually for me at least. Right, because like all the relationships are completely one-sided. When Georgia is with her first boyfriend, he's just sort of like dragging her around or whatever. She doesn't really seem to have a lot of agency. When her and the tramp finally get together, there's not really like basically they've never had a conversation. The only thing the tramp knows about this woman is that like I have her photograph. She looks pretty. She stood me up for dinner once, which is not a great, I mean, like love can happen very quickly sometimes, but that's usually not the best circumstances.
Yeah. And they end
Which,
up in love in the end. Or yeah, and weirdly she writes I love you in that note. Yeah.
right.
Surprisingly. Yeah.
And I think like Chaplin finding the millions of dollars at the end, because I mean he became famous, like internationally famous from a very young age. I think he was like maybe 18.
Oh really?
And when yeah, I mean, because the first Chaplin shorts came out in probably like 1913, 1914. So he kind of went from like most of these guys, they basically grew up in the circus, but it wasn't the circus, it was vaudeville. But
Yeah.
they're just traveling around doing this physical comedy stuff in front of live audiences. Buster Keaton was literally doing it from the time he was 2 years old. He was 2 years old. His family was a renowned vaudeville act known for their kind of rough, aggressive physical comedy, and they would literally like throw Buster Keaton across the stage when he was 2 years old. Like all those stunts in his movies, the reason why he feels so comfortable doing all that stuff is that he was basically being used as a human projectile from like before he would have been in elementary school.
Yeah, wow. I had
Um,
no idea. I mean, he's so good at him falling and hitting things and continuing to walk or falling down on the ground and coming right back up, and it all looks so natural. And it's all that so-called stunt work is just him doing his thing.
Oh yeah, or like Sherlock Jr. when he literally gets onto and gets off of a moving motorcycle and it looks like the most graceful thing in the world, and it's like, how the fuck did he do that?
Yeah. If you want to do it, just start at age 2.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've read Keaton's autobiography, and I can't remember the name of it, but if you just look up Buster Keaton autobiography, it'll come up. It's probably some like My Life is the Charlie Chaplin one, but it's some kind of generic title like that.
Okay.
And yeah, and him describing his childhood is like it gives you this very tangible sense of how cultural relativity works through time because everything he's talking about from the time he's 2 years old until he's 18, like Child Protective Services probably would have put all of his family in Guantanamo Bay if he was alive now.
And that's all recounted in the book. All the abuse that he received.
Yeah, and he doesn't look at it that way, right? Because it all
Yeah.
paid off in the end. And
Right.
he kind of has some of it comes through in the movies, like the Steamboat Bill Jr. There's like a lot of daddy issues in that movie.
Uh-huh.
That's the one that there's others, but Chaplin did not have quite that rough of a time, but he still, none of these guys had formal educations pretty much at all.
Okay.
Like I don't think Chaplin ever went to like a school. He was just sort of performing from a young age. And obviously Keaton never actually went to like Keaton was like he could take apart cameras and put them back together and stuff. Like he was incredibly technically gifted, but it was all from him just taking shit apart and putting it back. Like literally when he got signed to make movies from the vaudeville circuit, the first thing he did when the studio gave him the camera was he went home, took it apart, and put it back together. But yeah, back to Chaplin. There's a lot of like if you become really famous at a young age, you're probably constantly questioning the sincerity of the motives of the people around you.
What do you mean?
So figure like because he had like a really rough childhood in London, and he's roughing it, and then suddenly overnight everybody's like, "You're the most famous man in the world. We want to pile money on you." I'm sure there were women throwing themselves at Charlie Chaplin in 1925. And so the whole thing in this City Lights and a few others of the woman needs to see me in my prior form or else it can't be legitimate love. I think that kind of stems from that probably. I mean, it's also like a narrative trope, right? Like it leaves a weird taste in your mouth if it's just like, oh, I didn't like you before, but now that you got $1 million, let's go tap toes in a public restroom, right? And like Buster Keaton, like you ever see Seven Chances, the one where he's got like the brides chasing him down the mountain and the boulders are coming after him?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, right. And like there's a lot of stuff in Keaton's work about like being afraid of a woman trapping him, which was probably part he was in a terrible marriage, but he was married to like the sister of the guy who owned the studio or something, so he couldn't get out of it. And he
Oh.
just kind of like slowly started drinking himself to death.
Hmm.
He also broke his neck in 1924, and it's on camera.
Oh. Was it kept in the movie?
It's in the movie, yeah. It's I believe it's in Sherlock Jr. It's a gag where there's like a water tower, it topples over and he gets doused in a bunch of water, and the water hit him with enough impact where he ended up with a spinal injury that was not properly diagnosed for years, and
wow.
that made him drink a lot.
But with Chaplin, I guess to your point, his main character is the tramp, not the millionaire.
Right. And yeah, I think there's some other stuff there too, like he's always really good at like portraying people being down and out. Like I never really get the when the people are starving at the beginning of this, it feels very sincere. Like it doesn't feel like some guy in Hollywood trying to imagine like, oh, the gold rush. Well, let's have him. You'd do something more romantic than like a fat guy thinking you were a chicken. Or it would maybe I don't know, if I was like Hollywood not in touch person, I probably would do something a bit sexier than like a guy chasing me around in a chicken suit. But
it'd be a sexy chicken suit.
Yeah, it'd be a sexy chicken suit. Yeah, it'd be like sexy nurse chicken.
The Halloween costume.
Yeah, yeah, like those Halloween costumes where it's just sort of like bordering on fetish gear, but with like a lot of feathers.
Yeah. So what is it
Hey,
about
baby, let's see if you're really a big bird.
the
Sorry, Jim Henson.
So what about this? The is it about silence that attracts you to them so much? Because you've seen like tons and tons of silent films, silent shorts, and others. You've also watched 5,000 hours of 18 different versions of Degrassi Junior High, and all of John Cassavetes.
Mm.
But then what attracts you about the silence? What attracts you to the silence?
I mean, when I was younger, I think a lot of the attraction was I was a fairly, I mean, I still am I'm a less physically awkward human being, but when I was a teenager, I was extremely physically awkward.
Uh-huh.
And I could kind of relate to like I still do this a little bit. Like I don't have very good awareness of my body.
Mm-hmm.
So I trip over things a lot, but I've been doing it for so long that I'm actually like I can catch I've gotten really good at catching myself.
Uh-huh.
So like I almost do like miniature Charlie Chaplin things a lot when I'm just going around the house if I haven't cleaned up the floor in a while.
Uh-huh.
But also I think the fact that it's like the formative, like it's not the fully formed version of what we understand as movies, and anything in like an early prototypical transitional form, because I think I realized I wanted to make movies around the period I was watching all these silents, and I kind of thought like, okay, if I just watch the same 20 movies from the last 30 years that every other kid that wants to go make movies is watching, I'm probably going to make a movie that looks a lot like the movies these other whatever kids are making. And it just kind of shocked me. Like I would have conversations with these guys that I knew for like being huge film fans, and I would ask them like, oh, what's your top 5 movies, and none of them would be from before 1980, which kind of shocked me.
Mm-hmm. So not even The Godfather.
Yeah, no, not The Godfather. I mean, I'm thinking of like one person in particular who is like very into like that early '90s like Miramax neo noir kind of stuff, like Usual Suspects and those kind of movies. Which I mean, Usual Suspects I feel like didn't age very well.
Mm.
But and actually, wait, Usual Suspects got like Me Too'd in 2 different directions.
We've got Kevin Spacey.
And you got Bryan Singer.
Oh gosh.
So
Wow.
like the entire meat of the movie is Me Too'd.
Oh
And
no.
it's just like a really cheap twist at the end, and the stuff in the middle doesn't really justify it. Um but yeah, I was attracted to that. I was also doing stand-up comedy, so I saw it as like part of me studying the comedy form. I was obsessed with Bill Hicks at the time, and I read a few biographies of Bill Hicks. And one of the things that was mentioned a lot was that like when he moved to Los Angeles to try to make it in stand-up comedy, he just started renting like every Charlie Chaplin movie, every Buster Keaton. It's like, all right, if I want to get to that level, I got to do that.
But how do you go from a silent movie to a speaking medium? Because stand-up comedy, unless you're unless you're Carrot Top,
Right.
stand-up comedy is about talking and making people laugh by talking, whereas the silent movies, it's all making people laugh through the physical aspect, through movement.
Yeah, and I think I mean some of it can translate because I think when you're not dealing with the speech, you realize how much of the humor is not punchlines or cleverness, but the texture of descriptions, I guess. I didn't know what I was going to find in the things. I just sort of knew like, okay, I got to go watch all of these
Bill
now.
Hicks did it. That's what I got to do.
Bill Hicks did it, and then I watched. I think Sherlock Jr. was the first one that really like grabbed my eye, and I was like, holy crap, what did I just watch, right? Because like Sherlock Jr. is a complete mind fuck.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, holy crap, how did he jump into the movie screen? How did they do this in 1923, right? I mean, also like Woody Allen. I like loved Woody Allen when I was younger, and Woody Allen, you know, every interview I ever read, he was like, my films are not actually that good. Go watch some Ingmar Bergman movies and some Charlie Chaplin movies.
Oh, so he was right. No, he's made.
I mean, there's a few pretty good Woody Allen movies. I mean, he could have, in some other worlds, he went for quality over quantity, but it's not the one we're living in.
No.
But yeah, so I watched it and I just really liked it. I liked how weird it was structured. Weirdly, it was structured. I liked the funky music.
Okay.
I liked just basically the fact that it was enough like other movies where I could follow everything, but it was different enough where it was forcing me to question most of my basic assumptions about what is a movie.
Okay.
And also they were just very conveniently available at the public library. And I would take out like 10, 14 DVDs at a time sometimes from there. And just, I would do like one or two a day. I would kind of force myself. And like, I mean, a lot of them, I watched them and I don't think I picked up anything. A few of them I watched, like the Godard movie, like I watched Weekend when I was 16 and I'm pretty sure I absorbed literally nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, there's a traffic jam in the beginning. That's my deep analysis of Jean-Luc Godard's Weekend, is there's a traffic jam in the beginning, which is clear evidence that I watched it when I was 16. But also my younger sister really got into them, so we were enjoying watching these things together. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, they're funny. They're just very funny.
Yeah, they're really funny. And well, it's interesting what you're saying about the well, for lack of a better word, being a klutz.
Oh yeah.
And hence your attraction to Charlie Chaplin. I had similar experience with Buster Keaton. I wanted to have the same kind of physical grace and be able to, again, I wanted to be able to fall and get right back up without, totally fluid. In a Pee Wee Herman, I meant to do that kind of thing, except that,
right. I wanted to be like fluidly klutzy.
Yeah.
I
say if I'm going to be klutzy anyways, it might as well be fluid. I might as well have some control over it or be able to recover seamlessly. So that's
right. I think like the physical awkwardness thing that even carries through to like that it was a lot of the same appeal as Jerry Lewis, because a lot of the stuff is about I mean, Jerry Lewis is mostly about social anxiety, which I don't, or his work is mostly about social anxiety. I don't think that's what Chaplin or Keaton's work is about quite so much. Like Keaton, it's usually about like the futility of pursuing a woman, right? Because like the whole thing is like he's being sent off to war to go die for this woman he doesn't really know. In Chaplin, it's always like, oh, okay, if I'm patient, they will figure out that I have a heart of gold hidden under these mismatched clothes. I mean, there was probably some part of, where was I going with that? But like, yeah, I just really liked, and then I started watching some of the more serious silent films, and I really liked a lot of those. Like Passion of Joan of Arc is, like when you see that at a young age, it sticks with you. The Carl Dreyer one, not the Robert Bresson one, or the 18 bajillion other ones.
How old were you when you saw it?
Passion of Joan of Arc?
Yeah.
I was definitely in high school because I took it out from the library.
Okay. I was imagining the way you're describing it. I thought you were 11 or something like that.
No. I think the movie I saw at like 12, where I was like, I became initially obsessed with film comedy, was it my dad had TiVo'd Deconstructing Harry, which is like,
Woody Allen.
I haven't rewatched that actually since I was 12, but I just remember it's the only Woody Allen movie with a lot of cursing in it. It's like him trying to do Lenny Bruce, I guess.
Is that the one where he plays a writer who goes to a writer's conference or something like that? No, what's this one?
It's one of them, I think. It's basically, it's like a it's a remake of Wild Strawberries, or not a remake, like a reimagining of Wild Strawberries as the Bergman film. So he probably was on the way to a conference because that's the plot of Wild Strawberries.
Okay.
But the thing that stuck out to me was like I actually laughed out loud, which I pretty much never did at the children's movies I saw.
Is
Like,
Deconstructing Harry the one with the hooker? Yeah, doesn't he take a hooker to the writers' conference, or is that a different movie?
yeah, yep.
Yeah,
He takes
okay.
a hooker to the right, and then there's the other hooker movie, Mighty Aphrodite, which is not as good.
But in Deconstructing Harry, the hooker is black.
Correct.
Yes, who might be the only prominent black person in a Woody Allen movie.
Yeah, basically.
Of all his films, it's one black person, and she's a prostitute.
I think there's like a Butler and Melinda.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
I'm really reaching there. Yeah.
Great. So he's
That's
got a
like
butler and a prostitute.
35 movies, right? And I mean, his movies are all about like confusing sex with cultural assimilation.
Uh-huh.
Which I mean, you know, like a young Diane Keaton, I would be pretty confused too. But yeah, I saw Deconstructing Harry, and I just like I laughed. You know, I was like actually lolling throughout the movie, and I was like, whoa, like, and so you know, I basically just like hectored my parents until they took me to the drive-in movie store. May it rest in peace. We go in there, and there's an entire wall of Woody Allen movies. Or not like a wall, but there's like a shelf with like pretty much everything on VHS.
Uh-huh.
And then I took out Annie Hall. Didn't like it that much just because I don't think I was old enough to understand anything that was going on, you know, because like it's you don't need to have been in a relationship, but I think you do need to be older than 12 years old to understand or to get most out of it. Like I understood like, oh, okay, they're dating, now they're not dating, you know, so on and so forth. But
how do you get from there to Charlie Chaplin?
also I watched Love and Death, and then I read that stuff, and I just became very, very much obsessed with film comedy, which made sense. Like I was when I was obsessed with comic books before I was 12, because like until I was 12, I probably read a lot of comic books, and the ones that most stuck with me were the humor comics. Although I think most of what I was reading was superhero comics, but the stuff that actually has stuck in my head now is like Mad Magazine,
Oh, okay.
Mad Groening, School is Hell. Like School is Hell, that was a game changer for me. I read that when I was 8.
That was great stuff.
Yeah, like all those Life in Hell comics. I just remember reading that and thinking like I want to be this funny at some point.
Yeah, The Simpsons were life is hell light.
Yeah, and he's just such a like Groening, he has so little in the way of draftsmanship abilities, but he manages to do so much with it.
Why was there never a Life in Hell? Is it Life in Hell or
Life in Hell? Yep.
It is Life in Hell.
Mongo. So
why was there never a Life in Hell cartoon or movie or anything like that? Or was there? And I just
there was never one. Although Bongo and the rabbit characters show up in the background in The Simpsons sometimes.
Okay.
The Konami Simpsons arcade game, the one we played through at my house that one time, they're the Life in Hell characters, like they show up at various places in that game.
Okay.
But so Matt Groening, he gets a call from the Tracy Ullman show. They're like, hey, we love this Life in Hell stuff. Can you make some shorts? Like basically they just wanted Life in Hell as an animated series of shorts for the Tracy Ullman show.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, oh shit, I'm going to have to sign away the rights to my life's work, right? Because like The Simpsons don't exist at that point. Life in Hell is the entirety of Matt Groening's legacy in 1987. So he's like, shit. In like 5 minutes, he doodled like somebody with spiky hair and somebody that looks like a really like if somebody on like a really shaky train was trying to draw Homer Simpson.
Okay. Right. Homer Simpson in the original Tracy Ullman shorts looks. He evolved.
Yeah, he looks pretty scary, but
He became some slightly less. He became more normal ape-like. He was really disturbing ape-like to begin with.
right. And like the first season too, like because the first season what was it? He sent the character design layouts to the animation studio in Korea,
Mhm.
and he thought they were going to clean up the designs, and they literally just used what he sent them. And
Oh,
I mean that's on him,
yeah.
but that's why
This
the
was-
first season of The Simpsons looks so like kind of like underground comicsy versus the rest of it.
It's very crude. They're not.
Mm.
Their features aren't rounded. They're all very. They're jagged.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everything's kind of like grimy, or not grimy, but kind of like it looks. It doesn't look like somebody's cleaned it in a while, I guess. But yeah, so he sketched this out. He goes into the office and he says, here's my pitch for your shorts. It's called The Simpsons." And then he used all the characters' names are the names of the people in his immediate family, except for Bart, which is just an anagram of brat.
Oh, I never made that connection. I saw these when they first came on. I used to watch the Tracy Ullman show I think it was Sunday nights.
I think so. Yeah.
I remember, I saw the first Simpsons cartoon live, live cartoon. I saw it when it first aired.
Oh, the first short you're
Oh,
talking
the
about.
first short. Yeah, I saw the first short. I mean, I saw the first full episodes too, but because I watched it when they first ran.
Right.
I am that old. But yeah, I saw the first shorts. And I remember, wow, the outcry over that about how foul-mouthed they were and the way what a horrible kid Bart Simpson was.
Mm.
And oh yeah, people were upset. And these are cartoons. Cartoons are for kids.
Right, and compared to like the Life in Hell comic strips, I don't want to say they're tame, but like Life in Hell is one of the most simultaneously funny and like depressingly bleak
Yeah.
takes on existence that like I've probably ever come across. But yeah, so I read, so you can imagine being stuck in the back of a car on a family vacation, like road trip thing. So and the only thing I had to read or entertain myself with, I think, for probably like a few weeks was this School is Hell comic book, which probably explained a lot of my issues with higher education later on. So, like, and I probably read that thing. I mean, like at that age, I would, if the thing was there, I would read the comic book. If it was the only thing there, I'd read it like 20, 30 times sometimes. And that's a pretty short book, so I probably read that at least, yeah.
So you didn't have a laptop in the back seat in which you can watch all of Charlie Chaplin and Woody Allen?
No, you needed to get all that stuff on DVDs. Like it was fairly,
Yeah,
I'm
you
gonna
need
say, like if I'd known better what I was doing, I probably could have pirated a lot of it. But I mean, the Saratoga Springs Public Library has, or had, I don't know if they still got it there, but a really, really well curated DVD collection, like lots of Criterion stuff, all the major like Kino DVD box sets of the silent stuff.
you
Just
didn't
like a lot of stuff. And the ladies at the library got to know me as like the young guy that was constantly asking for interlibrary loans.
have
And like if you flirt with the old ladies behind the desk at the library, they can pull strings and get you stuff from the university libraries. Life pro tip.
were they behind the desk, or were you behind the desk when you were flirting with them?
Oh, they're behind the desk because they actually work at the library. I'm just there, and it's like, hey, can I get a copy of this book? And they're like, oh, it's in Rochester somewhere, and it's like, I'm not going anywhere. Like,
So they also knew you as the silent movie kid?
yeah, I think they were kind of baffled. Like the school library too, because I had two like interlibrary loan things going on. So like I got a copy of Constant Stanislavski, My Life in Art, but that was a really hard book to get a hold of because I was trying to get it through the library. Like, if I wasn't trying to get it through the library, I'm pretty sure I could have gone on Amazon and bought like 3 copies for $1 at that point because they hadn't figured out how to get the used price market or the used object market on Amazon to not crash like every few weeks.
Well, it's $1 plus $3.99 shipping and handling, right?
Right. Yeah. And like back then, they still had I mean, I think they still have penny
Right.
pricing on some stuff, but they didn't, there wasn't enough traffic going in versus inventory going up. There was no clear, basically, you could get a lot of things that are fairly expensive now for next to nothing if you knew what you were looking for. Yeah, I just ended up watching a lot of silent movies, I guess. And
That's what it all comes around to. No. Those were great explanations. There was a
and like the transitional thing, I think was a huge thing for me because I wanted to find the hidden things so you could find the language that nobody appropriated yet.
Okay.
So I was also like very interested in early newspaper comic strips at that point, like stuff from the early 20th century. Little Nemo in Slumberland, Crazy Cat, Polly and Her Pals.
Right, when we did the cat cartoon episodes, you pulled out that giant book of Crazy Cat strips that you have the complete.
And I have another book over here somewhere that's literally in. I think my older sister got it for me as a gift when I was a teenager. And this is like if you only have one book of newspaper comic strips in your house, this is the book to have. It's called the Smithsonian Collection of Newspaper Comics. You got examples of literally every genre going back like decades. It's enormous, so you can actually read the things. Like a big issue with newspaper comic strip reprints is that they try to print them the size of normal comic books when the actual art was meant to be printed on something like.
So everything from Pogo to Little Abner to Family Circus.
Oh, well, I mean, that's later. That's like, okay. So, I mean, I do like Pogo. I love Pogo, but Pogo is like in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, or at least I'd have to double check on that. Little Abner is like 30s through the 50s, I think. And then Family Circus, I don't think came out until like the mid 60s.
Not me.
Which I did used to love, like whenever I could get my hands on those zines with the like slightly doctored Family Circus cartoons. So yeah, like there's a great one in, I think Daniel Close did it, where it's just like there's like a bottle labeled XXX on the table. Little Billy or whatever his name is next to the table looking sad. And it just says at the bottom, "Mommy says I should have been a shmortion." Right? And like they're out there. They're not the easiest thing in the world to find, but there are a lot of people who have put together just like fucked up remixed Family Circus comics, and they're universally better than the actual Family Circus comics.
Okay, I'm imagining. I remember Little Billy. I forget the other kids' names, but you've got.
I don't even think Bill Keane remembers the names of it's just the most forgettable. I mean, I guess it's not as bad like Mallard Fillmore. That's some weak sauce, but
I used to read that. I
used to read it too. Yeah.
I never thought it was funny. I just read every single comic strip. I never thought it was funny. I thought I got it. I just didn't think that the jokes were funny.
Yeah, it's just like...
Wasn't he a newspaper editor or something like that? Or a political writer?
Well, yeah, he's like... it's like I wouldn't call it far right given the times we're living in, but definitely a conservative. It was supposed to be like a conservative version of Bloom County, but it just wasn't any good, but they just kept running it.
I didn't get the joke of the name. I didn't realize that it was a play on Millard Fillmore, the president.
Right.
Because I didn't know about Millard Fillmore, the president.
I knew Mallard Fillmore before I knew who Millard Fillmore was. Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. So it wasn't just me. So, all right. I mean, not that improves in the joke. It's not a very funny joke, other than like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's the name of a bird.
I remember when I was like really young, I loved the scratchiness of the guy's art style.
Uh-huh.
Like I've always been kind of attracted to that.
The art was neat. The jokes were not.
Yeah, the writing was just terrible. And then I found like Jules Pfeiffer and Lou Myers, and then I really like, oh, okay, you can get the scratchiness and the quality.
Oh, I remember when I discovered Jules Pfeiffer. In fact, I think I might still have the book. It was 666. I'm staring right at it. It's a
Oh my God, yeah, 666 changed my life. Oh my God. When I found it like that and Unexpurgated Memoirs of Bernard Mergendelier.
I'm tempted to go and open it and read it, but it's old and it's falling apart. It was falling apart when I got it.
Oh yeah, every copy of that's falling. It's not a well constructed book. I have a whole somewhere in the other room. I have because they that was a weekly strip that ran in the Village Voice in New York.
Uh-huh.
He started out as Will Eisner's assistant on The Spirit, and then he moved on and he got this strip. Those are all collections of strips that were in the Village Voice.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's a different edition than I have.
Really? Okay, just so for the folks at home, I just walked across all the way across to the other side of my room, which I think is a 6-foot walk. It's just enough for barely enough for social distancing. And I pulled up my copy of 666. I'm holding up, and Dan sees it, and you said it's not the same.
It's the one that I have. I'm pretty sure these are all in one place, so I can just grab them.
I can't describe the art is it's very crude, but you get a lot of personality out of each one. And now I'm thinking about it. Most of these aren't really funny. They're biting.
Right here.
And they're sad. But yeah, I don't remember. Are these ha funny?
I thought they were ha funny when I was a teenager. I mean, he kind of goes from like funny to sad to he has a really great sense of pacing, and I loved how there weren't panel borders. But yeah, check this shit out.
Oh wow. Okay, Dan's holding up his Jules Pfeiffer collection, and there are 6 books.
I have a signed copy of the first 10 years of the Village Voice strips, but
wow.
Honestly, I prefer to read these because Fantagraphics didn't do the best job laying out the giant collection.
I'm gonna put. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say I'm going to put my copy of 666 back on the shelves because it's falling apart in my hands. I've already got little yellowed crusted pieces of books in my
So if I had to get
now,
this is the earlier edition, but same deal, like spines falling apart. I've probably because I used to give copies of this to people when I had extras, and I've never found one that was in decent condition, like in nice cosmetic condition. Yeah, there's so many of these.
So my copy of 666 was right next to my copy of Spaceballs, the book. Also a movie that I saw when it first came out. Oh, okay.
This is my favorite one of the paperbacks, the Unexpurgated Memoirs of Bernard Mergendelier.
Huh. Right.
But they're all. I mean, it's all from that period when he was at the Village Voice. He did a lot of other stuff too. Like there was a full color watercolor strip that he did. I think 20. There's 20 strips that were done for Playboy in the early 80s that were great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely blanking on the name. I was collecting old Playboy magazines when I got to New York City because they were cheap at the flea market, and it was whoa.
Hey.
I was the only guy actually collecting the Playboy magazines for the cartoons.
The cartoons were great.
Oh yeah, I mean Hugh Hefner was a failed cartoonist. So was John Cheever. Not John Cheever. John Updike. John Updike was a failed cartoonist. Then he's like, shit, I guess I got to write real books.
Writing is easy. Cartooning is hard.
Yeah, cartooning is not as easy as it looks.
Yeah, you've got to get an entire book chapter in 3 panels.
Oh yeah, it's like writing a haiku or so. That's and I mean this isn't I think Chris Ware was the guy who said, or maybe he took it from somebody else. I don't know. It's like a pretty it's not the most hard to make observation, but yeah, everything in Peanuts down to the visual style is just how do we get this in the absolute minimum of details? Charlie Brown is literally a circle with a squiggle.
Yeah.
The grass is always just squiggles. The dialogue is always stripped down to the bare minimum.
It's always 2 words. Good grief. That's the entire strip.
Right, and that, like, compared to some of the more realistic or realism inspired art styles that were popular in superhero comic books, that holds up a lot better than, like, okay, like Jack Kirby is an exception, Steve Ditko is an exception. Most of the rest of that stuff, though, like, the closer you get to photorealism with comic books, the more problems you have, I feel like, and they just always feel weird. Like, have you seen a fumetti?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, you probably. I'm sure you've probably seen it. It's just like, it's the word for when you take actual photographs, put them together in like a comic book format, and then overlay dialogue on it.
Oh wait, I just learned the term rotoscopes. Is that the same thing but for movies, or is that something else?
No, rotoscoping is when you trace live action footage. This is like literally, like, if we were doing it with the podcast, it would be like if I took a bunch of still pictures of you and me sitting here right now, laid them out like an 8 to 12 panel Sunday comic strip, and then put speech bubbles saying what I'm saying right now and what you say in response into it.
Okay.
Marvel used to do a lot of it where it was like they'd take their editorial staff and they'd do some kind of like goofy filler page.
Yeah. Spy Magazine used to do that. No, not Spy Magazine. National Lampoon.
Mm-hmm.
National Lampoon used to do that. Okay.
Yeah, and so the technical name for that is a fumetti.
Okay. Wow, I learned two cartoon / comic / real life things, sort of the opposite of each other, in the past 3 days. So fumetti and rotoscope. Okay, not the same thing. But
yeah, no, rotoscoping is like the first iPod commercials where it's clearly like a person actually moving, but it's just the black silhouette with the background. That's rotoscoping. If the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings, like most of the Ralph Bakshi movies have a decent amount of rotoscoping in them.
Yeah, Waking Life.
Scanner Darkly.
Yeah. Either of which I like, but that's
it's like very common in commercial. Oh, and the Max Fleischer Superman cartoons. If you ever saw those 40 Superman cartoons.
Yep. Oh, really?
Yeah, they would have a guy actually make the movement. That's why the movement looks so fluid in those cartoons.
Oh, okay.
That was also Betty Boop. The Fleischer studio was like huge into that. Like, if you ever saw that one Betty Boop cartoon where there's like Cab Calloway keeps changing into like a ghost or change or whatever, and he's
singing
the St. James Infirmary Blues. That's rotoscoping of Cab Calloway actually moving around, but like they riff on it.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Damn. So he is singing and acting in it.
He's singing, he's moving, and then they just sort of go crazy with the rotoscoping, and they can make him morph into anything or whatever they want.
So I'm going to take Betty Boop just based on the rough timing, just going a little later than that. But if we go just only a few years back in time, we end up back at Gold Rush.
Correct, the Gold Rush. Yeah. So
how's that for a transition?
Back to the Gold Rush. So I don't know. I mean, do you have any thoughts on it?
I really enjoyed it. So I actually well, okay, I'm going to jump off of it again, but Charlie Chaplin is famous. If you talk about silent movies, silent black and white comedies, the first name that comes up is Charlie Chaplin. And my friend in high school, I can't remember how the name Buster Keaton came up, and I didn't know who he was talking about. Like, he was, I don't know if taken aback, but he was like, Charlie Chaplin is? Yes. Okay, imagine 10 times funnier. And so then I started watching Buster Keaton, and I thought Buster Keaton was phenomenal. So I've definitely seen more Buster Keaton than Charlie Chaplin. So in some ways, I look down on Charlie Chaplin, like, yeah, whatever. Buster Keaton. Now that's funny stuff. Charlie Chaplin, I don't know what that's about. So I haven't seen that much Charlie Chaplin as a result. I was
the same way when I was going through that phase. Like, I just devoured all the Buster Keaton stuff.
Yeah.
And then the Chaplin stuff, I watched like the big ones and then filled in the gaps a little bit later on in life.
Yeah, so I did see Modern Time a little later. I saw Modern Times and The Great Dictator, which are both great movies, but they're different from the silent shorts because there's actually a little bit of speaking in it. Not much. It's mostly physical comedy, and to the just his wonderful movements and visual gags and choreographed to the music. You've got the famous scene with
Right, it has like an actual soundtrack.
Yeah. And you've got him dancing, the dictator, Hitler, basically, dancing like playing with the giant the globe.
Oh, the beach ball scene. Yeah, that's like
beach ball globe. Yeah, I hadn't seen that many of the silent shorts. So this is good to I don't want to say catch up, fill in the gap. I've seen the famous scene. Oh yeah, we didn't mention it. The famous scene.
yeah, there's two famous scenes in this movie.
Well, I'm thinking about the potato dance.
Oh, the potato ballet, yeah.
Right. We talked about the shoe eating, but we didn't talk about the potato ballet. So it was great to finally see it. And that's him using sticking the two forks in the potatoes and then having them dance.
Right.
Table. Again, choreographed. It's to the music and everything. So that was beautiful. So I was glad to see the whole movie, that and the eating the shoe scene, and seeing the whole
bear costume. I fucking love that bear costume. Like whatever that bear that would randomly show up, or not randomly, but
the bear showed up a few times. Yeah. Until they kill it.
Right. I just love the look of the bear because it's obviously a studio backlot, the whole movie. Yeah. There's probably two sets that they used to make the whole movie, right? There's the inside of the dance hall and the inside of the cabin.
Right. And the mountain. You also see the mountain exterior.
And the mountain, which the mountain was probably, you don't see people on the mountain at any point, do you?
Well, you see Charlie Chaplin and you see the bear walking through the mountain pass. Oh, and walking in the mountain pass. You do actually see Big Jim, and then there's this other guy and the lawman just very briefly who get into a gunfight and die. You do see them in the mountain, but you see very little. Again, it's clearly a studio backlot, right. Or it's inside the studio, probably.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, no, it was great to get a little bit of it was almost like the film education, silent movies, or famous silent movie scenes 101.
Yeah, and I think I don't know which movie I would say is my favorite Chaplin movie, but this is definitely up there.
Okay.
And yeah, the potato ballet thing. When I went to prom when I was in high school, I did not have a date, but I had to go because I was nominated for prom king.
Uh-huh.
And basically, the principal took me aside and was like, because I hadn't bought a ticket, because I the previous year I just skipped the whole thing to go draw comic books for 24 hours with this guy who kept doing whippets.
Uh-huh. Ooh, that sounds fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. Any last thoughts on Gold Rush?
Not really. I'm kind of surprised how few thoughts I had on this movie. I enjoyed it. I understand why it's important. It's just not sparking me to think the way that poorly written Batman comic books seem to.
Right. Yeah. It's not a thinky movie by far. It's sweet. It's sweet and funny, and it's also somewhat like I said, it can be a little dark. But it's mostly a sweet, funny movie. So low key. So all right. On that note, yeah. So this has been Anomaly Questionable Movie.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Ron.
And we will see you at the movies.
All right. Take care, everyone.